Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this SIMS webinar live today. We are talking about InnoDisk or InnoOSR on-site recovery. And joining me all the way from late afternoon in Taiwan is Daniel Fan, who is the product manager for InnoOSR. Welcome, Daniel. Daniel's going to give a really quite in-depth overview of InnoOSR, what it can do and where and how it should be deployed within your system. So without taking too much of Daniel's thunder, I will pass over to him now all the way from Taiwan. Daniel, good morning or good afternoon.
Good morning, Graham. Thank you for having me here. Okay, good morning to you all. And to start with, I would like to bring you a little corporation profile. Okay, it will just take a minute. So we were founded in the years of 2005. Since the beginning, we have focused on industrial storage, DRAM modules, and embedded peripheral cards. Globally, we have 14 sites and almost 700 employees. In the year of 2020, our yearly revenue was around $240 million, and we have achieved a 20% YOY shipment growth rate. Here in InnoDisk, we are very proud of our in-house R&D capability. We have our own firmware, hardware, as well as software engineering team, which enable us to provide you with a more comprehensive solution. So far, with great work from our team, we have accumulated 150 patents. So when it comes to solutions and where you can use our products in, we have customers from all different kinds of fields, ranging from aerospace, embedded system, server boot up applications, gaming, in-vehicle, as well as factory automation, surveillance, and network. Okay. In this slide, you can see InnoDisk has been recognized as partners by many renowned brands such as VMware, Microsoft, and Intel. Also, we have been ranked as #1 global industrial SSD supplier by Gartner for 3 consecutive years now. Okay, here is our topic today, InnoOSR for recovery, just one click away. So there will be 3 parts today. I'll begin with the overall introduction of OSR, how does it work, and why we think this product will greatly benefit our customer or your customer. In second part, you will know about how our firmware operates within the SSD and how the recovery process actually works. Lastly, I will share some of our recent features in development and QA to answer some of your questions. Okay, first, OSR. So OSR stands for On-Site Recovery or Operating System Recovery. Just like the name suggests, we are aiming to provide the shortest downtime can be in the market. Okay, if you are using Windows, this image may be one of the most dreadful images you can see on such systems, meaning whatever you have achieved in the past few minutes, you got a chance of redoing them all. This may only bring little troubles to average workers such as myself. However, since AIoT is clearly the next big thing that brings countless new opportunities, as well as new challenges, with the potential deployment of billions of sensor, edge computing device, information gathering hub, and infrastructure needed to deploy these systems, this kind of software failure may cost your customer a great deal more. Okay, that's why we look back to the most fundamental part, management and maintenance of systems of great quantities. To that end, we have prepared InnoOSR. Here in InnoDisk, we have been constantly looking for new breakthroughs that make us better partner to our customer. And this time, we aim to minimize system downtime. In this slide, you can see an edge computing system in the very center, composing motherboard, which is the hardware level, OS, the operating system levels, as well as the application level, where we usually use our program upon. Okay. And this kind of system can be deployed to many different places for different applications, such as smart manufacturing, surveillance, and digital signage, as well as other unmanned devices. With integrations of OSR SSDs, a direct link through an LED button cables between user and SSD can be established. This link will allow easy triggering of OS restorations. Here, I'm going to talk about why. And the question may have raised in your mind when you hear system recovery. You may know there are plenty of solutions aiming to do the same thing for the past few decades. And what's so special about OSR, and why are we recommending them to you? There are plenty of solutions which can be categorized into two major approaches to achieve system recovery: software method and hardware method. For software method, there are Windows in-house backup, Acronis, VM, and many different products with powerful features such as image management, easy migrant between systems, auto backup, and data compressions. As for hardware solutions, there are many different RAID card supplier and RAID card products. In some cases, with Intel tech, virtual RAID can also be achieved with certain series of multiple PCH and CPU. Hardware solutions usually provide no fast RAID 1 disk-to-disk mirroring, which is super simple to use. So what's the room here for InnoOSR? Why do we still, let's say, get this series ready for you? Okay. Here I have prepared a comparison between solutions from different perspectives. So let's start from here. For functions, software solutions usually provide a very efficient backup image management, as well as very diverse options, diverse functions built into the software. As for hardware solution, physical separations of the backup images is one of the major features. Also, it usually provides disk-to-disk RAID 1 mirroring. As for InnoOSR, we focus on the key partition backup. For training needed, for software solutions, your personnel might need to go through MIS or IT level training to operate your systems and add software backup solutions. As for hardware, it's next to none after the initial setup because the RAID 1 will take care of almost everything. As for OSR, it also requires next to none after the initial image as the building up. So it is also very easy to use. For setup cost, usually software solutions comes with certain license fee depending on how many features you like to operate to enable. For hardware solutions, you will be needing a RAID-capable platform or RAID cards to take this method. Also, you'll be needing an additional disk, at least 2 disks to make RAID 1. As for InnoOSR, there's only a little, let's say, minor cost addition compared with our standard SSD. And also, a cable will be needed, and the system, a minor system mechanical modification may be needed to host these extra buttons, which is the size of a regular antenna. Okay, so what is the major advantages for software solutions? Firstly, it will be a very efficient space usage because on application levels, this tool can judge or can make sure that which files are needed to be backed up into the image. So there will be no extra space needed to copy the image. Secondly, malware protections. Just like as mentioned before, some of the extra features can be built into such software solution, such as antivirus. For hardware solutions, the major advantage would be the full disk backup as well as the hardware redundancy because they actually have 2 independent disks installed into your system. For InnoOSR, the major advantage is that it is very easy to operate for the initial image setup or the follow-up recovery triggering, only needing you to push a button. Second, it will be a single disk firmware level backup, meaning that there will be no OS environment needed to operate it. Our scenario for OSR series is that your system encounter a software level crash or software level damage, and without an operating system, the software solution will not be in discussion because it cannot even operate normally. So you may need to bring extra equipment such as a laptop for the recovery process to go smoothly. However, for InnoOSR, the disk itself with the direct connections through the bottom cables, only personnel need to push the button, then the recovery process will start. Okay, so what about the disadvantage? For software solution, OS environment will always be needed. Also, training will be needed for your personnel to operate such solutions. For hardware solution, the biggest disadvantage would be the much higher hardware setup cost. Okay, as for InnoOSR, it means that since we only adopt one disk to store the image upon, so partial of the user space will be needed to be cut out from user space as image hosting, which is a hidden area. Okay, as for scenario, software solutions are usually suited for enterprise environment where there are a lot of well-trained personnel to operate such software solutions or tool. For hardware solutions, it is best suitable for crucial data protection requirements. Lastly, InnoOSR, we targeted AIoT or IoT devices, which requires this certain level of recovery capability, but they are also deployed in the millions or in great quantity. Okay, that's why we are thinking that InnoOSR will be a great tool or great series for you to solve your OS backup and recovery problems or requirement. Okay, its firmware level recovery will be very capable when encountering such OS crash or OS damage scenarios. Okay. Furthermore, InnoOSR series comes with 3 modes, dedicating to suit a customer's field requirement. There are standard OSR, shift boot, and also Auto-Reboot, also called as watchdog mode. Don't worry, I'm going to walk through each and every one of the modes for you to see. So actually all OSR models, all OSR modes aim to provide OS recovery when software damage occurs. For mode 1, standard OSR, the major features are one-click recovery, meaning personnel on site can trigger recovery procedures with one simple push of the button. No complicated steps to go through, just a push and a bit waiting. We also prepare a simple graphic UI tool for image establishment and management. Lastly, the data partition kept usable. What do I mean by that? In OSR scenario, to conserve space, we can back up only, take Windows for example, only C partition, which is the boot up partition, and the coordinates of other partitions. So after recovery, the remaining data or program in other partitions can still be accessed by user, even when they are not backed up to the hidden area, provided they are not damaged by any kind of malware. Okay. So what is a triggering method for mode 1? It is very simple, just like I mentioned, one click of the button. So the system requirement to implement mode 1 would be a mechanical design which is capable of hosting extra one LED button and for the triggering as well as the status check. So the scenario we are aiming is factory automation, where there are a lot of systems deployed in this facility, but there are not as many trained personnel for troubleshooting. Okay. So the customer type we're aiming would be the production line system, SI, or human machine interface SI. Majorly, we focus on automation and different type of SI. For second mode, shift boot, it's actually very similar to mode 1. The major differences would be the dual backup image design, meaning we store dual backup in the hidden or reserve area. When system damage occurred, After user pushing the button, our firmware will instantly shift the coordinate of the boot up area to one of the backup image we built, which we call backup number 1. So after booting up, user can use the system normally again. In the meantime, our firmware will start background copying from backup 2 to the damaged original partition, making our solution always ready for the next accident occur. Okay, so the triggering method is actually the same as mode 1, one push of the button, and the implementation requirement is also the same, and mechanical design to host one extra button, and we're aiming for medical or application with minimum downtime requirement scenario. Our targeted site will be dense system deployment facility with low time requirement. So the targeted user are also personnel with no troubleshooting training, and the system type should be medical workstation or smart ward system. Okay. For the third mode, Auto-Reboot, it is actually a little bit different from the previous 2 modes. In this mode, we also provide the simple graphic UI for image management, data partition kept usable, but there's one special feature which is very interesting, self-monitoring of systems. Okay, so what do we mean by self-monitoring? In this mode, we will require our customer to install one little program we prepared, which is called and service in Windows or agent in Linux-based systems. So this tool, all it does is send out regular signal through the SATA controller to our firmware. So after our firmware constantly receive this signal, it will judge that the OS is operating normally. No freezes or no damage occurred on the operating system itself. So nothing will happen as long as our firmware kept receiving such signal. But if OS freezes occur, then after a certain amount of time, our firmware will judge that, oh, something wrong with the system. We will initiate a reboot through the hardware reset pin, which is located on most of the motherboard. And after the initial reboot, we'll check whether we can receive the signal from this service or agent. If the second time we still cannot receive such a signal in a certain interval of time, we will initiate the system recovery process, shifting to, just like mode 2, shifting to the first backup and boot up from there. Okay, then the in-band software solutions such as team viewers can kick in, and the personnel offsite can gain access of the system and run further diagnostic. Okay, so what is the triggering method? It is auto-rebootable and recovery, so there will be no human interactions needed. So what's the system requirement of implementing this mode 3? We'll be needing an SSD to motherboard hardware reset pin cable installed into your system. Also, the Heartbeat service or agent program, which is a little program I mentioned, is allowed to be installed onto your system. Okay, so what is the scenario? We are targeting unmanned scenario or unmanned systems such as digital signage, AIoT device, or other unmanned applications. So the targeted site is hard to reach or no personnel on-site facility. There's no user since it is auto-executing, so there's no human interactions needed. System type would be digital signage, environmental monitoring system, even low orbit satellite. It is an actual ongoing cases. We are getting OSR integrated to some of the lower orbit satellite actually. So customer type, we're targeting aerospace SI, digital signage SI, or AIoT or infrastructure SI. So here is a little table. You can see that we have all 3 modes listed out. Standard OSR, shift boot, and lastly the auto-reboot, also known as the watchdog mode. So the feature is actually the same. We are aiming to provide you with an easy image recovery capability with one single disk and a very simple tool for image management. Okay, so the triggering method for mode 1 and 2 is the same through a cable. For the third one, Auto-Reboot, it will be auto-executable, so there will be no triggering, human triggering. As for system requirement, for the first two, we're requiring a button LED cable hosting to the panel, system panel. And for Auto-Reboot, you'll be needing a cable from SSD to motherboard reset pin. Also, the heartbeat services and agent need to be installed into your systems. So the targeting, the scenario or target for first mode would be the factory automation. The second scenario for second mode would be medical and application with minimum downtime requirement. For the Auto-Reboot, the targeting scenario would be no-man systems such as signage, AIoT devices, and unmanned applications. Okay. So here's a little summary for the OSR scenario. Actually, all systems can use, anyone with such easy OS backup requirement can use our OSR series. And the requirement for adopting OSR series will be mechanical capability with 2.5-inch M.2 2242 or 2280 disk with additional 1x4 pin headers for the communication requirement, as well as the mechanical capability of hosting an LED cable or a disk to motherboard hardware reset pin cables. That's all we need to implement OSR into your system. Okay, as for the time frame here, we can see the brief introductions of the spec of our SSD. They come in 3 form factor, 2.5-inch SSD, M.2 2280, as well as M.2 2242. And these are SATA interface during the solution aiming for boot up drive, and they are all in mass production phases now. So you can order them right now from Sims. Okay, in this part, I'm going to provide a little walkthrough of how we do our backup and how your users should be using OSR SSD. Okay, the first step will be connecting the LED button cable to our drive. In here, I'm using mode 1, for example. And with second step, you divide it, partition, and install the operating system. Thirdly, a user need to ready all the partitions, meaning that they have to cut out all the partitions, format all the partition, so that our tool, when scanning, can get the coordinates of each individual partition for later use. And in fourth step, the OSR space check. Our tool will initiate a space check after you choose which are the partition you want to back up into our hidden area. Then we'll start the image backup while enabling write protect. The reason why we'll be needing to enable write protect is that we need to make sure the image is exactly the same to a very moment, to make sure that the image itself is usable in later cases. Okay, sixth step, the OSR tool will shut down the system, and after the successful backup and cancel the disk write protect. So after this step, the user will only need to reboot, repower up the system, then you can use your system normally again. Okay, in this little chart here, you can see that a user may use 300 gigabytes for OS and data, which customer wants to back up to the hidden area. Then after all these above steps, the OSR tool will check if there's enough space for 300 gigabyte backup image in the backup partition, which is not accessible by our user or by our operating system. And the image will be back up into this hidden area. Okay, that's the walkthrough of how to establish OSR image backup. As for the last part, OSR development. Okay, so will there be future update of OSR firmware and software? And yes, just like your iPhones, OSR project will receive constant update and features are on the way. So for the second part, what features may be released in the next version? Okay, so firstly, we have get quite some feedback regarding the security part, because you don't want people to tamper with your already built-in image. So we are adding the password to prevent accidental image change. Okay. Secondly, we are going to simplify image deployment process for customers' reproduction, because we also know that a lot of our customers, they actually cannot get access to their end customer's image. So they will be needing to teach their end customer to do such image establishment prior to their shipment. Thirdly, OSR tool customization for logo and words. So I know that some of your customer or yourself do not want to see this logo on our tool, and we can do that for you just with a little minor customizations. And lastly, hidden area size change on site. So the reason why we're adding this is because that currently all our shipped samples are with a pre-designated hidden area size, meaning that if you choose a 40 gigabyte hidden area with your sample, then later on you would like to try like backing up a 60 gigabyte, you couldn't do that. You have to went through a reinitialization of our SSD with help from our support team, which can be troublesome sometimes. And we're adding this and teaching you how to adjust the hidden area size on your site. Okay, but it may damage the existing data within your disk. So there will be some, let's say, notice on our documentations. And actually, that's all for today. And thank you very much for your time.
Daniel, thank you very much for a very interesting and quite in-depth overview to InnoOSR. I'd just like to point out to our audience that this whole presentation will be posted on the SIMS YouTube channel, and we will email you all with the link after within 24 hours, and also contact details of all the SIMS key personnel. So let's turn to questions. First question in, Daniel, there's quite an extensive range of SATA-based drives. Are there any plans for any NVMe drives at all?
Actually, NVMe OSR is in discussions, and we may plan to launch them later next year, because we're going to launch them with our Gen 4 solution instead of the existing Gen 3 solutions.
Okay, good. Another question, what operating system can OSR be used on?
Okay, for a Windows-based system, we have tested on Windows 7, Windows 10, and certain Windows PE, and we are capable of using OSR on all of them, but sometimes you may need some patches installed, and those patches, those information can be provided through our support team. As for Linux-based, we actually have tested Ubuntu 17.10 and CentOS as well. But to my knowledge, as long as your OS and your NVMe drivers, SATA drivers, allowing vendor a command to go through to our drive controller, then it's okay to use OSR on most of the existing operating systems.
So it's really quite a universal device to put across any operating system.
Yes, we actually try to make it as Sorry?
Sorry, there's been a bit of a delay. Okay, let's move on to another question here. You mentioned about the hidden area on the SSD. How big actually is the hidden area?
Okay, in our design, it can actually go as big as half of the total user capacity, meaning that if you are getting a 1 terabyte drive, the biggest image you can back up would be around 470 something gigabyte, half the size.
So quite a size depending on your requirement. Just on that, Daniel, how will the hidden area affect the SSD lifespan?
Oh, actually, in background, from firmware perspective, they are all user space. So all the blocks, no matter they are in the user space or located in the hidden space, they are all going through the same global wear leveling. So there will be no negative impact on the SSD overall lifespan.
That's good to know. The simplicity of InnoOSR is it's a system reboot at the push of a button, which is a massive selling point if you're deploying lots of applications across, say, a large factory floor. Are there any other ways besides pushing a button that you can trigger an OSR reboot?
Okay, we do have certain, let's say, some customer feeding back this requirement because they don't have enough mechanical space to install an extra button cable. So we do have some customizations with their BIOS team to trigger with key combination from BIOS level. So that's also one method to trigger OSR.
Sure. Are there any competitors to OSR? I certainly haven't seen anything like this on the market. Has InnoDisk at all?
We actually have seen one supplier with similar function. However, it is quite a bit different because in their design, they can only do the backup recovery once, and we can do it multiple times due to our own firmware design capability. We have designed our firmware to be more, let's say, can be stably used over the deployment of your system for years even.
Yeah, so in effect, there are no other competitors to InnoOSR?
Yes, so far we don't see any competing ones.
So Armando Santiago, I hope that answers your question. Another question, yes, there will be a presentation of the copy, audio and video available after this webinar. As I say, we will email everyone with a link to the presentation. So are there any more questions? I think we've covered everything there. If there are, please post them in the Q&A. If you do have any questions after the presentation, I appreciate there's quite a lot to digest, a lot of good information. You can contact the team at Sims, sales@sims.co.uk. Again, everything will be on the email that we send out within 24 hours of this webinar ending. So Daniel, is there... oh, no, sorry, there's another question coming. Oh, that's a good question. If somebody wants to test InnoOSR, how do they go about it?
Okay, so we do have
a physical sample.
Okay, sure. You can order the OSR samples from Sims, and we'll be providing certain tool for you to walk to the documentation so you can set up the environment yourself. And afterward, we do provide a certain kit for you to damage your operating system intentionally, so you can test that by yourself.
Oh, that's a really good selling point. I hope nobody wants to damage their kit intentionally, but I can see why you did this. So yes, attendees today, if you would like to get hold of a sample, is that all form factors, Daniel?
Yes, we have 2280, 2242, and the 2.5 inch.
Thank you. If you'd like to get your hands on a sample, again, contact Sims International and we'll be able to help you. Looks like there are no more questions come in. So somebody asked what's the relationship between Sims and InnoDisk. Sims are a UK distributor of memory and storage, industrial embedded memory and storage, and we've been going for 31 years now. And InnoDisk are a partner of ours and have been for many, many years. And we distribute their whole range of products. So that's memory, that's flash, that's embedded peripherals. We've got a very good working relationship with them. They're a very knowledgeable company, do excellent product. So if you haven't had the chance to look at their portfolio, have a look on innodisk.com. And if you have any questions regarding their products, please do contact the team at Sims. So I think that pretty much wraps it up for today. There aren't any more questions. Daniel, thank you very much for your time. I know it's quite late in the afternoon for you guys in Taiwan, so enjoy the rest of your evening. Ladies and gentlemen attending our webinar, thank you very much. I hope you found it very informative. So quite a lot to take away, but if you do have any questions, please come back to the team at Sims. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you very much, and goodbye.